All right, everybody, welcome back to our channel. Today will be like a part two of the last video we did, and we named it The Bible, Is It True? And this will be kind of a part two of that, and I think we're going to do a part three next time because I don't want to put all of this stuff into one video and it's just be overly complicated. So today I want to focus on, basically, if you ask almost any Christian and ask them, is the Bible inerrant or without error? Almost everybody will say yes. And almost anybody who's not a believer will obviously say no. So this video here is going to be more geared towards Christian claims that the Bible is inerrant. We believe that the Bible is inerrant, but there's certain things that are probably, I don't want to gripe and come down on Christians because most Christians have just been taught church tradition their entire life, and they never really questioned a lot of things that are in the Bible that actually contradict what most Christians believe. So it's when you ask them these questions and they don't know what to do with it, because it's like, well, they are taught a certain way their entire life, but then when they see the Bible just completely contradict that, they don't know what to do. And I think that leads to a lot of people, say a person is raised in church their entire life, and I watch these videos on YouTube a lot of people who grew up in the church, believed their whole life, were totally involved in the church, and then they got to go to higher learning, maybe like a university or something, and their faith just nosedives. And because a lot of times they're approached with a different worldview, and they're asked about really hard things in the Bible that they just don't know how to back up, because most churches don't teach the Bible and most people don't read the Bible. So they're kind of just at a loss right off the bat. So a lot of them just start questioning everything and they just don't know what to do with it. So we're going to go today into some of these claims that the Bible says, and does what the majority of the church believe, does it hold up? I would say no, but that's my personal view. I'm not trying to do this to come down on Christians, but I want people who are Christian to really think of what they believe in, and if they are faced with these questions, how are you going to answer them? So, do you have anything to say to add to that before I start reading?
No, not really.
All right. So I'm going to start in Deuteronomy. And listen what is said here, because this is going to be kind of the backdrop of everything I'm going to talk about. So Moses is talking to the Israelites. This is right about a time where he's about to die, and they're about to enter the land of Canaan. And he says, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And whoever will not listen to my words that he shall speak in my name, I myself will require it of him. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, this is the important part. Well, it's all important, but this is the main point I want to get to. And if you say in your heart, how may we know the word that the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him. So the reason that I wanted to base everything on that is you see the simple outline for what a prophet has to be. This is the guidelines. Basically, if what this prophet says, if it doesn't come true, then that is not from God. He is not from God. And actually, according to the law, he should be put to death. And or at the end he said, just don't listen to him. He's not of God. So this is the baseline for what their expectation of a prophet is. Also, if you notice in the beginning, he prophesies that I will raise up for them a prophet like you, like another Moses from among their brothers. Okay, so just so we're clear, in the book of Acts, this is Peter, and I'll show you that their claim, they straight up, it's in the Bible, that they claim that Jesus is that one that is prophesied about. So I'll read it just so we know. It says, Moses said, the Lord God will raise up for you a prophet like me from your brothers. You shall listen to him in whatever he tells you, and it shall be that every soul who does not listen to that prophet shall be destroyed from the people. So he's claiming, because before that, he identifies Jesus as this prophet. This is Acts chapter 3. I read verse 22, but if you want to take a more deep dive on this, I suggest you read the entire chapter. I just don't want this video to be 6 hours long. So we're seeing Moses said that this prophet will arise, and everything he says must come true, or he is not of God. Peter here is claiming that this Jesus is that prophet. So will that stand up? And that's what we're going to find out, because that's really important. Because if we're going to go around telling people that the Bible is inerrant, it has no errors, Jesus was exactly who he said he was, the New Testament is 100% true, then it should stand. And if not, we have problems. Like, basically our faith would be in vain. So we're going to go through a few. I'm not going to go through every single claim. Again, this video will be 6 hours long, so I don't want to go too much in that. So she's going to be looking up these things and reading them. But we're going to go through a few claims that the New Testament and the Old makes, and we'll see if they stand up. Okay, so for a backdrop of a couple verses that I'm going to have her read, almost every Christian you run into today, I'm overwhelmingly believes that the Bible predicts the end of the world, and that
there's signs pointing to that.
Yeah, there's signs pointing to the end of the world. Jesus is going to come back literally, physically, and he's going to completely end the world. There's going to be a physical resurrection, like the earth is going to turn into a Michael Jackson Thriller video. And but it does predict the resurrection. But is he talking about a literal physical bodies coming up out of the ground, or is it something different? I don't know. But we're going to get into that, because there's also a time period that is predicted to happen. And like we said, we went over this prophet, Moses and Acts. If it's not from God, and they did give timelines, and they're going to give a lot more, if it didn't happen at the timeline, then I have every right, and anybody has every right to question. So, first one she's going to look up was Matthew chapter 16, verses 27 and 28.
Okay. For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly, I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom.
Did you catch that? He says there are some of the people standing in front of him whom he's talking to that will not taste death until they see this coming. Now, I've heard of a lot of people say, well, it's this, it's not this, or this verse is split up and it doesn't matter. I think it's pretty clear. He predicted that he's going to come in the glory of his Father.
In judgment
with the angels. And there's plenty of... I'm going to get into more of that, because this is not the only time that he says stuff like this.
Yeah, because a lot of people say that it's the transfiguration 6 days later.
Yeah, and nobody died and there was no angels. So.
Right, there was no angels, there was no judgment.
Yeah.
he was glorified. He was in glory, I guess. But there was a lot of this is missing.
What he means by and that's another thing. If people want to look at that, he's coming in the glory of his Father, which means he's going to come in the way that his Father always came down in the clouds in the Old Testament, and that would be in judgment. God didn't come down on a surfboard on a cloud, and nobody saw him literally, but that's how they would have understood these things. We don't so much because we're reading it with a 21st century Western mind. This is an ancient, the Bible is an ancient book. It was written 2,000 years ago to a very different culture and in a very different language. They would have understood what he was saying. But regardless of all that, he clearly said to them, this is going to happen before some of them die. So that's a bold prediction. Again, we're going to go to Matthew 24:34. Now, if anybody who doesn't know, Matthew 24, many people believe is about the end of the world because it's talking about, the sun being darkened and the stars falling from the sky. Again, this is very poetic, apocalyptic language that is used.
But you can find in the Old Testament and other judgments. The Bible interprets the Bible.
Yeah, but anyway, after he's done, and within this, it's called the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24, which is about the destruction of the temple. They even ask him, because he alludes to the temple being destroyed, and they ask him, when will these things be, blah, blah, blah. So the context in and of itself should give it all away, but whatever. So anyway, after he talks about he's going to come on the clouds and the glory. So, but my main focus is Matthew 24:34. Okay. After he says all these things,
I'm going to read the initial question that he's answering first, just so we know what he's literally answering. Jesus is answering the disciple. But he answered them, Jesus, you see all of these, do you not? Truly I say to you, there will not be left one stone upon another that will not be thrown down, talking about the temple. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And then there's a whole, what he was just talking about.
Yeah.
And then verse 34, which is the focus, is, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place.
Yeah. And in there is where you get, the wars and rumors of wars and persecution, the tribulation, the sun going dark, the moon turning to blood, all these things. So this is, like we said, this is common language with, the ancient Hebrews about the moon turning to blood and the stars falling. You could find this numerous times in the Old Testament about the judgment of a nation. This is apocalyptic, kind of like poetic speech that they would use. But if you take it literally, like a lot of people do, then the stars fell from the sky to the earth numerous times in the Old Testament, which we would not be here at this point if that happened one time. So we got an issue there. So you see both of these times he's predicting that this is going to happen in their generation. There's no question about it. And people try so hard to make us say something that it doesn't, and it's such simple language. I mean, there's a lot of, apocalyptic language in there, but there's also language in there like that verse that clearly tells them, without any ambiguity at all, that this is going to happen in your generation. Like, it's going to happen. So, if it did, well, then the Bible holds up. If it didn't, we have problems. If we're still waiting for it 2,000 years later, like most Christians believe and teach, I can't, with a good conscience, say that the Bible is inerrant. At that point, it would have a pretty big error. And according to Deuteronomy 18, he would be a false prophet, and we would have no business listening to him.
And a lot of Christians that I've even asked this to, they say, well, no one knows the time or the hour, not even Christ. Not even the apostles. Okay. It's like, well, then why would they claim it? Well, why would they say something?
Yeah. So here's the Here's the thing why people like to say that, because later in that thing he says no one knows the day and the hour, except for the Father himself. But the thing is that doesn't prove anything because of the fact that he lays it out, and he kind of compares it to a woman giving birth and birth pangs. So a woman, when she gets pregnant, she knows that she's gonna have a baby in roughly 9 months.
Yeah.
She doesn't know the day and the hour that's gonna happen, but she knows when it's gonna happen. It's not gonna be 2,000 years later. Like, this baby needs to come out. It's like, so he's comparing it to that. I mean, he didn't know the exact day and the hour, but he knew the time frame. It was okay. I don't want to get into all that, but okay, where do I go from here? All right, so here's another thing. The book of the Revelation. Most people believe that it's about the end of the world and the Antichrist, and I don't even know, to be honest. They confuse even me, because where they go with the book of Revelation makes my head spin, and it doesn't make sense the way they view it. By they, I mean most of the church and Christians. They believe in, everything that happens technologically is the mark of the beast, and it just makes my head spin. But
there's the Bible. Like I said, the Bible interprets the Bible, and there's so many references to the Old Testament in the Revelation, it's not even funny. So if you're trying to interpret the Revelation through the news,
yeah, it's crazy.
Like, that, it's not gonna work.
No.
That's why everything they say never comes true, because you can't interpret it that way. Look at the Old Testament, know your Old Testament, and you will know how to interpret it better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, but at the same time, it's not a Stephen King novel either that you just make insane accusations about either. But anyway, I want to get into, there's a reason that we talk about the Revelation, because a lot of the Revelation is in the book of Daniel. Some people say that Daniel is like the Revelation of the Old Testament. But here's why I want to bring it up, because in Daniel, the end of Daniel, and I want to read this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to read
Chapter 12.
Yeah, chapter 12, but I'm trying to figure out if I want to break it up. I'll just read verses 3 and 4 for now. It says, now this, he's talking about the time of the end. Okay, he's referring to that. And he says, and those who are wise shall... You know what, I'm just going to read from 1 to 4, because I'm just going to miss too much. It says, at that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never has been since there was a nation until that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall not be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book. Take note of that. He says, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. And at the very end, the very last verse of Daniel, Daniel basically says, he doesn't understand a lot of what's being told to him. And God answers him basically saying, but go your way till the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of the days. Okay, so basically he showed him things, but he didn't understand, but he told him, seal it up. It's not for your time. It's not for you to know right now. It's for the time of the end. You're going to go and you're going to die and you're going to rest with your ancestors. That's his lot in life. And that's what happened. But notice he told him to seal up the vision. He told him seal up the scroll because it wasn't for their time. Take that and the end of the book of Revelation, you have a complete opposite of that.
Verse 10.
It's verse 10. Okay. Now, this is the end of the book of Revelation. He says, and he said to me, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Let the evildoer still do evil, and the filthy still be filthy, and the righteous still do right, and the holy still be holy. Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense with me to repay each one for what he has done. Okay, now notice, Jesus said that in Matthew 16, he's going to come and repay everyone for what they have done. He's telling, in the book of Revelation that
It's soon.
yeah, it's soon, and don't seal the words of the prophecy up because it's at hand. It's right now. Like, it's not for the future. It's right now. And he alludes to what he said in Matthew 16 to his disciples in their face. He says, there's some standing here who won't taste death until this happens. So again, if the book of Revelation is about our future 2,000 years after it was written, we have a problem. I hope you see where I'm going with this. Like, you can't say that the Bible is inerrant and then basically insert your worldview and put errors in it. It just makes us look bad. Because if someone were to, be in a debate with a Christian and they brought this kind of logic up, they would look really bad. Like, you would be embarrassed. And it's not good. So, what am I going to go to next? Okay, so go to Matthew 13, 36 through 43. I only have a few more. I'm not going to go through every single time. I just want to get a basis of where I'm going with this. Like in
What's the verses?
36 through 43. So this is a parable by Jesus, again talking about the end of the world.
Age.
Yeah. It's the end of the age, but most people think it's about the end of the world. But you'll see this also ties into what I just read in Daniel, because he's quoting Daniel 12 here.
Then he left the crowds and went into the house, and he and his disciples came to him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father, and he who has ears to hear, let him hear."
Okay, so we see, and while we're waiting, flip to 1 Corinthians 10:11. Okay, so he says that this whole thing is the end of the age. Again, you could see Matthew 16 in there about the angels coming and reaping, the people. So he says that this is a picture of the end of the age. Now, remember, he quoted here Daniel 3 and Daniel 12, where he says, that he's talking about the resurrection. And he says, those who turn many to righteousness will shine like the stars of heaven. They'll be luminaries. Here, he says they'll shine like the brightness of the sun. It's still resurrection language. And it's the people who turn many to righteousness will shine. Now, note, he says this was the end of the age. So, what is this is Paul in 1 Corinthians 10 verse 11.
"Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come."
Paul is claiming that the end of the ages has come on this generation, on them. Do you see a pattern here? It's Jesus, it's Paul. It's actually everywhere in the New Testament, but
you can pick a book and it's there.
I'm not going through every single time that this is mentioned or talked about, because it's literally all over the entire New Testament and Old, to be honest. But read Hebrews 1:1. This is just one verse. just to get a sense of where we're going.
Okay. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets.
Well,
but in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom he also created the world.
Okay, so we see there that, again, he's saying that they're in the last days, the end of the ages. Over and over and over again. It keeps happening. And the last verse I want you to read for now is Hebrews 10:37 and 38.
Okay. For yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay. But my righteous one shall live by faith, and if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him.
Okay, so you see, in a very, very little while. Actually, that is the correct interpretation of that. And it's not exactly bad. It says in a very little while. It's not super hard to understand, but actually, if you look at the Greek, it's very, very little while. He's making an extreme emphasis on it being a very, very little while. And it says, he who is coming will come and will not delay. Well, if we're still waiting for that, 2,000 years is a pretty big delay. I mean, that's like, he's speaking to specific people here who's going through a lot of hard times. Okay, so if you read the book of Revelation, the very first chapter, John says, I, John, a partaker with you in the tribulation. Okay, they were in tribulation. They were going through really hard things. They were being persecuted. They didn't know where to run to. They had all this stuff going on. If you read the history of the first century of this time, it was chaos. So he's promising them these things. Okay, so if it didn't happen, then this would have done no good to these original readers. Okay, the book of Revelation is written to the 7 churches in Asia Minor, which would be modern-day Turkey. These are real places. I mean, they're ruins now, but they were real at that time, very real. There was churches there were people there, and he's writing to these specific churches, and if he's saying to them that they're going to get relief soon from these people who are persecuting them and killing them, and he still hasn't, and they're nothing but rubble now, like, that's a false hope, and it actually makes the book of Revelation extremely dishonest. And some people, if you're a complete, skeptic and you're not a believer in the Bible, that gives you a lot of ammunition, to be honest with you, because it's false hope. They would have taken this and believed God, and we're still waiting for these things to happen 2,000 years from now. That doesn't, what it was Vodi Bokum said, that dog won't hunt. Like, it just doesn't work. You can't have it both ways. What do you say? You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, it's either this or it's that. Okay, that's it. So
and the main response from Christians a lot of times is, well, a day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as a day to God. And it's like, yeah, but he's talking to people inside of space and time, and he's giving them a direct time frame. Okay,
so that's where I want to end this with Daniel 9, because this is a big thing. Okay, we're not going to read all of Daniel. It's 3 verses, Daniel 9:24 through 27. We're not going to get into all of it. Maybe in another video, because there's just a lot there. However, notice he keeps saying the end, the end, the end, the end, but nobody stops and asks the end of what? Okay, the end. People saying the end of the world, they're imposing that onto it. It doesn't say that. It just says the end. So you have to ask the question, the end of what? Because it doesn't say the end of the world. It says the end of the age sometimes. Well, what age? What does that mean? But Daniel's going to kind of give you an insight of what this end is. So read 24 only first.
70 weeks are decreed about your people in your holy city.
1 second. So when he says 70 weeks, he's meaning 70 weeks of years. Okay, that the ESV just says 70 weeks. You can look into that. But this is how they counted years. If you read Leviticus, I forget where, I'll look it up. But that's how they counted Jubilee cycles. He says count 7 weeks of years. Okay, and that's 49 years. And on the year after that would be the year of Jubilee. But here he doesn't say 7 weeks of years. He's saying 70 weeks. So it's 490 years. So he's given a timeline. 490 years. Okay, go ahead.
70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city to finish the transgression, to put an end to sin and to atone for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal both vision and prophet, and to anoint a most holy place. Know therefore and understand that...
Wait.
Oh yeah, that was...
Just 24,
sorry.
Because, yeah, it's going to get really deep and... Hold on. So, the very beginning of that, the reason I wanted to get into that is it says 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city. Now we're getting a little bit warmer on the end of what? It's not the end of the world. It's the end of the old covenant system. It's the end of that whole thing with the genealogies. It's the end of going to Jerusalem to make sacrifices. So in 70 AD, Jerusalem was burnt down and everything was done. And if you get into all the math of it, from the time Daniel was written, 490 years later leads you right up to the time of Christ. Mm-hmm. So this is why you have this like Messiah craze in the New Testament, because they knew what time they were living in. So they're like, are you the one who is to come? Are you the Messiah? Just tell us, why are you? So because you didn't see that kind of expectation in the Old Testament, but in the New, it's like all over the place. Because they knew. But yeah, they had the time frame. They relied on it. So, but he's not talking about the end of the world. He's talking about the end of Jerusalem and the holy city. Well, Jerusalem is the holy city, but you know what I mean. So, like, he is getting into all that, and he's giving them the timeline. And he also is talking about putting an end to sin, to atone for iniquity, to seal up vision and prophets, to atone for iniquity. So now almost every single Christian will agree with you that, oh yeah, he atoned for our sins. He did this. So, like, well, okay, you believe that, but you discount the complete end of Jerusalem and everything, which would be the old covenant. So they disregard that. But I'm like, again, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, you have to. I never understood that saying. I
so
use
you're saying it. Like...
yeah, I'm saying I know what it means, but to me, it just doesn't register. I'm like, you can't have it both ways. I mean, because you really can have cake and eat it.
Well, yeah, after you eat it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like, you can't just, insert things. It says what it says. We are a religion that has a text. Okay. I know every religion has certain texts, but ours is specifically based on a Bible. That's it. Like, these are our texts. So you either believe what they say or you don't. And I started this video with Deuteronomy 18. If what the Bible says does not come to pass, whether it's Jesus or it's Paul or it's the author of Hebrews or it's Daniel, if it didn't come to pass, they're false prophets. And they quote, we've read to you only a few things. It's kind of constant that they are inserting that this is happening in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. So, if I am a skeptic and I could point these out, like if I'm not a Christian, I could point these out to a person who is a Christian, how would they answer these things? If they believe that, well, we're still waiting for Jesus to come back and the world to end. Well, he gave you a time frame. He was very specific on the time that it was going to be. And if you say that that's not true, who's lying? Is it me? I'm okay with being wrong, and I don't understand, or another person is a liar, which, there's not a lot of people who lie. But if Jesus was wrong, and Paul was wrong, then my faith is in vain, and yours. So any religion, anything is a house of cards. Okay, you take one card out, the whole thing comes crumbling down. And I don't
depending on, there are going to be people who disagree on things like,
fine, yeah, like simple things like, okay, baptism, is it like a infant baptism or stuff like that, or
right.
Yeah, I don't. These things.
That's not going to
whatever.
break down your faith. You
No.
know what I mean? And,
But if
and like we have talked about too, like if somebody, I think in these videos, like if somebody told us, if we found out that the Earth was 3 billion years old or however many,
yeah,
tomorrow, it wouldn't affect our faith at all.
No.
But this stuff claims from Christ and the apostles. If they're false, then that's a big deal.
yeah. So basically, if you're still waiting for these prophecies to become fulfilled in our day, and most Christianity does, we got a problem because you're contradicting the Bible, and you're an open target for skeptics, to be honest with you, because you won't have an answer, and you'll look stupid trying to defend it. And I'm not saying they are stupid. I'm saying you're. I have never met a Christian who is able to correctly answer these, or even not look and just start fumbling all over the place.
Well, we've met plenty of Christians that can.
What? Can what?
Can correctly answer these.
Well, yes, people who believe, in the Bible.
Right.
And who have studied this thing, but I mean Christians who, and honestly, I put a lot of blame on the church, to be honest. I do, because they don't teach. They kind of just teach churchianity all over, that's what they do. But then when they come face to face with somebody, well, what about this? What about this?
Yeah.
They don't know what to do. They start fumbling all over the place. And
just have faith.
yeah, just have faith. Well, okay, but why have faith if it's not true? I think it's true, and that's what we're going to get into in the next video, because this is already getting long. But
honestly, these confronting these questions has deepened my faith and his faith, and seeing that Christ did what he said he was going to do when he said he was going to do it was huge for me.
Yeah. So in the next video, I want to get more into how we believe that these things were fulfilled, and the fact that he was not speaking of the end of the world. And I think when we go through the text, it's fairly obvious to anybody that he was never speaking of the end of the world. But I want to get more into, because I don't want to look like I'm just a total skeptic, just believing, trying to lead people away from believing the Bible. It's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to question and strengthen people's faith and think, this affects your worldview too. You see crazy things going on in the world, you see all this stuff, and people start freaking out, thinking, oh my God, Armageddon, and the mark of the beast is going to happen, and we're going to get sucked off the face of the earth in the rapture, and people are going to get left behind, and Nicolas Cage is going to fly an airplane, I don't... But you know what I mean? Like, anything that happens, they start losing their minds. And it's not good. We're not supposed to be a people who fear everything and to try to interpret the Bible by watching Fox News. And it's ridiculous. And I swear, we have more faith in our political system, our news, and Donald Trump than we do the Bible and Jesus. Like, it has gotten to that. It's crazy. It's embarrassing. But so the next video, I want to get into more of like, so how do we interpret these things? What exactly is being said, and how did these things come to pass if he wasn't talking about the end of the world? So we're going to stop this now so it doesn't go too long. It's already our longest video yet, and I don't want to start making these things over an hour. So join us next time if you want to get into how we believe how Jesus fulfilled all these things in the first century, and not something that we are looking forward to. Bye.